She was just a quiet woman living in the suburbs until one day, HOA Karen mocked her in front of the entire neighborhood. Why? Because the special forces had rejected her application. But what no one knew was that my wife had a past even the military couldn't handle. And when chaos broke out near our town, and an enemy camp threatened innocent lives, guess who took matters into her own hands? That's right, my wife went in alone, and came out a hero. This isn't just a story about revenge or redemption. It's about proving everyone wrong, including Karen. Stick around. It's a story you're not going to want to miss. And if you enjoyed this one, be sure to click subscribe, because tomorrow, we have another special story for you. It started with a letter, one of those stiff, overly formal government envelopes that always means bad news or taxes. Jenna didn't say a word when she opened it, just stared, blinked, folded it neatly, and slid it onto the kitchen counter, like it had personally insulted her. I raised an eyebrow. She gave me a tight smile and said, "Rejected. Again. Now, let me tell you something about my wife. She doesn't flinch. I've seen her chase down a mugger in heels and disarm a drunk guy with a pool cue. But that day, the look in her eyes just for a second was pure heartbreak. Not because she wanted the title or the badge. She wanted the mission. She wanted the fight, of course. This was before the infamous HOA BBQ. Before Karen. Karen was our neighborhood's self-appointed queen of everything. You know the type, tight pastel cardigans, pearl necklace like she's in a 1950s detergent ad, and a voice sharp enough to slice deli meat. She'd heard about the rejection within hours, probably from hacking our mailbox or bribing the mailman with banana bread. Either way, she pounced. "So," she said loudly in front of everyone near the grill, "how's civilian life treating you, Jenna? Still playing G.I. Jane in the backyard?" The laughter that followed wasn't even clever, just the kind of nervous chuckles people give when they don't want Karen's wrath aimed at them next. Jenna said nothing, just looked at her, dead calm. I knew that look. It was the same expression she gave our security system when it malfunctioned like. She was calculating exactly how to dismantle it without breaking a sweat. Karen wasn't done. I mean, maybe stick to yoga or something. Real defense works, probably not your speed. And there it was, the moment that set everything in motion. Karen thought she was throwing shade. What she actually did was light a fuse. People whispered. The story spread. Jenna got denied again. Guess she's not cut out for it. Karen says she tried to join the army and failed. Suddenly, Jenna wasn't the quiet, capable woman who taught self-defense classes for free at the community center. She was a punchline, a joke with a military fantasy. One night, I found her in the garage, wrapping her fists with tape. No music, no distraction, just her and the heavy bag. Wham, wham, wham. Each punch landed with the kind of precision that says she wasn't trying to hit it, she was trying to break something inside herself. "You good?" I asked. She didn't stop. "Did you know? I once held off 3 cartel gunmen with a flashlight and a broken chair leg. That got my attention." "Ah, no. You left that off the dating profile." She finally paused, looked at me with this haunted half-smile. "I didn't tell anyone. That's the problem. The special forces don't care about ghosts. They want files, rank, records. I've got blacked out ops, and ND, and that's when I realized Jenna hadn't been rejected because she wasn't good enough. She'd been rejected because she was too off the record to exist, too dangerous to vet. And HOA Karen had no idea who she was dealing with now. I'm not saying Jenna plotted revenge. She's not petty, but she did start running 10 miles before breakfast. She built an obstacle course in our backyard that made American Ninja Warrior look like recess. And she stopped talking. Not to me, not to Karen, just pure, focused silence. Karen, of course, kept escalating. Passive-aggressive notes, HOA fines for unregistered weapons training, a complaint about aggressive grunting during pull-ups. You'd think Jenna was running a paramilitary camp in the cold-d-sack. But we didn't know it yet. Something much bigger was brewing. Something that would put all of Karen's insults into perspective. Because soon, Jenna wouldn't just prove Karen wrong. She'd prove the Special Forces wrong too. And the world would watch her do it. Alone. I waited until Jenna got out of the shower before I asked. The rejection letter was still sitting on the counter, unopened, since the day she folded it up, like origami, and walked away. She hadn't brought it up again, but I had to ask. Why does it bother you so much? I said, carefully, like I was stepping into a minefield barefoot. She towel dried her hair in slow, angry circles. Because I shouldn't have to explain what I've done just to prove I'm capable. I raised an eyebrow. You mean the self-defense classes? The black belts? The time you talked down that guy with the machete at Costco? She gave a dry laugh, the kind that doesn't touch your eyes. No, I mean the missions, the real ones. That shut me up, because I had always suspected Jenna moved like someone who'd been trained by people whose names weren't listed on government websites. She could disable a drone with a dinner fork. She knew how to speak Russian, Farsi, and enough Swahili to order coffee and insult someone's mother. But I never pressed, because some things were better left in the shadows. Until now, she walked past me and pulled open the closet, grabbing a box from the top shelf. Inside were photos I'd never seen before. Her in desert camo standing next to a private jet with no markings. Her in body armor, crouched beside a man whose face was pixelated. A badge I didn't recognize. A coin with a symbol I didn't. Want to Google? You know what the Special Forces told me, she said, holding one of the photos. They said, your file's incomplete. We can't verify your service. You know why? Because half of it never officially happened. Because I wasn't military, was private, contracted, disposable. It hit me then. The rejection wasn't about failing a test. It was about being erased. Why didn't you ever tell anyone? I asked. She shrugged. Didn't think I needed to. I thought what I did would speak for itself. And here's where it gets worse. Because while Jenna was quietly dealing with her invisible war wounds, Karen was busy planning a full-on suburban assault. Not with guns, God forbid, but with the one thing more powerful than bullets in a gated community. Paperwork. Back first came the noise complaint, aggressive and disruptive training activities during nap hours. Then the fine, unapproved backyard modifications. Suspected obstacle course. Then the cherry on top, a letter from the HOA, demanding Jenna cease unauthorized paramilitary behavior. Yes, they actually used that phrase. I almost framed it. Karen, it seemed, had made it her personal mission to turn Jenna into some kind of villain, and she was loving every second of it. At the next HOA meeting, which Jenna wisely skipped, Karen made a whole show of reading Jenna's rejection letter aloud. She waved it like a golden ticket. We have to be careful about the image we present, she said. Someone trying to play soldier in our neighborhood could create a dangerous environment. People clapped. Not because they agreed, but because Karen had that way of making you clap. Like a boss at a terrible Zoom meeting. When I told Jenna, she didn't get mad. She didn't even flinch. She just nodded and said, then I guess I'll just have to be dangerous. She started waking up at 4 a.m. to run drills. Not just jogs drills. Scaling fences. Crawling through mud. Rope climbs. She rebuilt the obstacle course and upgraded it with tires, netting, even a dummy made out of pool noodles and rage. She tracked her time, studied tactical blueprints, reread her old field manuals, like bedtime stories. Karen, of course, filed more complaints. Claimed Jenna was intimidating neighbors with military cosplay. Actual quote. But the thing that scared me the most, Jenna didn't care anymore. Not about Karen, not about the rejection, not even about the neighborhood. She was laser-focused, and it was the kind of focus that made me realize something big was coming. I just didn't know what. Then came the first report on the news. A local radio tower had gone dark. Rangers closed off part of the nearby woods. Authorities said it was technical issues, but Jenna caught the background audio on the news broadcast muffled, but clear to her trained ears. Encrypted radio chatter. She sat forward, rewound it, listened again. I watched her face go cold. That's not static, she said. That's coded movement. Someone's out there. I tried to laugh it off. Come on, it's just hunters or teenagers playing with radios. She didn't laugh. No, that's a grid coordinate relay. That's how you move supplies through a blind zone. I blinked. How do you know that? She looked at me. Just looked. And suddenly, I remembered. This was the woman who once took apart a rifle in 30 seconds during a power outage with one hand. That night, she went into the garage and opened a locked case I'd never seen before. Inside, gear, real gear, tactical, gloves, units, infrared goggles. Not the kind you buy at a surplus store, the kind you have to earn. She turned to me and said, if I'm right, someone's planning something out there, and I'm going to find out what. I stared at her. My wife. The one Karen said wasn't qualified. The one the government said wasn't real enough. She checked the comms, tested the frequency, and strapped on a vest that looked like it had seen more action than most soldiers do in a career, and that's when I realized the rejection didn't break her. It woke her up, and if the world thought Jenna was just some ex-security dropout with a backyard gym and a point to prove, well, they were about to find out just how wrong they were. It started with a boom sharp, distant, and wrong. You ever hear a sound so out of place that your brain takes a second to register it? That's what this was. 1 minute we were eating cereal. The next, the sky echoed like a bad movie explosion. Except this wasn't a movie. And that wasn't thunder. Jenna was on her feet before I could even drop my spoon. She ran to the window, eyes scanning the tree line like she was expecting enemy fire. I followed her gaze, but all I saw were birds, scattering in every direction, and a faint pillar of smoke rising over the ridge. Communications tower, she muttered, already grabbing her boots. Northridge, that's where the emergency band relay sits. Now, I don't pretend to know what all that meant, but the way she said it, like she wasn't guessing like she knew. And that's when the fear kicked in. Not for us, but for whoever was dumb enough to light that fuse. By afternoon, the forest trails were blocked off. Park rangers posted vague technical malfunction signs and orange tape. No one was buying it. Rumors, Flumeth Lab, poachers, a military exercise. Gone wrong. But Jenna had already ruled all that out. She sat at her laptop for hours, headphones on, bouncing between encrypted forums and old radio surveillance pages like she was chasing a ghost. When she finally looked up, her face was pale. It's a camp, she said. An illegal one. Heavily armed. I blinked. Camp? Like what? Hikers with a grudge. She shook her head. More like mercs. Hired muscle. Probably dumped here after a job overseas. No one wants to clean them up, so they vanish into places like this. And now they're, what? Making a base in our woods? Jenna nodded grimly. And not just a base. They've got gear signal jammers, encrypted radios, possibly weapons-grade tech. It felt surreal. Like, 1 minute, we're dealing with Karen's dumb HOA notices, in the next, my wife is talking about rogue mercenaries. Camped out in the same woods where kids go looking for frogs. I asked the obvious. Why isn't anyone doing anything? Because no one knows what they're really dealing with, she said. Not the local cops, not the rangers, and special forces. They're tied up 2 states away. Minimum response time, 48 hours. I remember standing there, trying to process that, while the evening news flashed photos of smiling park rangers and said it was just a controlled situation. Yeah, sure it was. Jenna paced the living room, her brain already miles ahead. We can't wait. If they're setting up shop, they'll move deeper by tomorrow. disappear completely. And if they're moving weapons. She didn't finish that sentence. She didn't have to. She stopped pacing and looked at me. I'm going in. At first I laughed, because my brain couldn't handle what she meant. Like into the forest. Into the armed mercenary camp that just blew up a tower. But her face was dead serious. And the scary part, I knew she could do it. You can't be serious, I said. You're one person. I've been one person before, she replied. And that was that. The next morning, she laid out her gear like it was just another Tuesday. Tactical vest, silent boots, mini drone, thermal cam. I helped pack. Not because I agreed with her plan, but because deep down I knew, if she didn't go, no one would. That's when Karen showed up, of course. She marched up the driveway like she owned the asphalt, holding a clipboard and dressed in her signature pastel armor. What is all this? She asked, looking at Jenna's gear like it was cosplay. Are you seriously playing Navy SEAL again? Jenna didn't even blink. Karen crossed her arms. You couldn't even get into the military, and now you think you're going to stop terrorists or something. I opened my mouth to reply, but Jenna beat me to it. She just stepped forward, calm as a monk, and said, Karen, if something happens in the woods tonight and you hear explosions, stay inside. Karen scoffed, but her laugh was just a little too high-pitched. You're insane. You're not even qualified. Jenna gave her a look I'll never forget. It wasn't angry. It wasn't smug. It was the look a lion gives a barking dog. Then she turned and walked away. That evening, I set up the monitoring station in our garage. Basically, a folding table, a headset, and a laptop connected to Jenna's drone feed. I watched her move through the trees like a shadow, silent and precise. She wasn't guessing. She was hunting. I couldn't breathe for half the night. Just listening, watching, waiting. Then her voice crackled through the comms visual on the camp. Confirmed targets. At least 10. Armed perimeter is loose. They're not expecting anyone. Get out, I whispered. We'll call in backup. No time, she said. They're loading something into a truck. Looks like a warhead case. I felt sick. But Jenna was already in motion. One by one, the guards went down. Non-lethal, silent, clinical. She disabled comms. She planted charges. She found 2 men chained inside a shipping container alive, civilians. That's when I knew this wasn't just retcon anymore. By 4 a.m., the entire camp lit up like the 4th of July. Jenna emerged from the trees covered in mud, bruised, limping but alive. The mercs, scattered, captured. The weapons, destroyed. And Karen. Karen watched from her porch as Jenna walked back into the neighborhood, dragging a confiscated duffel bag and looking like a scene from John Wick. Homeowner edition. The news never mentioned her name. The military showed up 2 hours later. Too late, because Jenna, she'd already handled it. Alone. Let me paint you a picture. It's pitch black outside. The kind of darkness that swallows light whole. The air's thick with pine and tension. In our garage-turned-operations center, I'm hunched over a folding table covered in wires, snacks, and a laptop that's barely keeping up with the drone feed. Jenna's out there, in the woods, moving like a ghost. And I'm holding my breath like that'll somehow keep her safe. We called it Operation Lone Ghost. Not officially, of course. But if she was going in all in, I mean completely all in, then the name had to reflect that. No backup, no extraction team, just Jenna, a backpack full of destruction, and a score to settle. Before she left, we spent the entire day prepping. She dug into her old network people you don't find on social media, or even the dark web. These are folks who operate on burner phones and encrypted walkie-talkies, who owe her favors from places they can't even talk about in daylight. By noon, she had blueprints of the old ranger's cabin, now the enemy camp. She had infrared scans, drone footage, even a makeshift schematic of their radio jamming setup. If the government had sent in a team, they wouldn't have been this prepared. But then again, the government hadn't been mocked by HOA Karen while pulling weeds. Watching her gear up was surreal. It was like living with Bruce Wayne but never seeing the Batcave until now. She moved with that practiced calm, checking each strap, blade, battery, and bullet like she was folding laundry. I handed her a protein bar, and she looked at it like it was her last meal. "You don't have to do this," I said. "One last shot." "I already am," she replied. At exactly 10:42 p.m., she vanished into the trees. Not even a branch cracked under her boots. The drone hovered overhead, whisper quiet. Through the thermal camera, I could see outlines of bodies sentries circling the camp, maybe a dozen guys total. 2 stood near the shipping containers. 1 had a radio, another was smoking. All of them were armed like they were expecting zombies. Or worse, Jenna reached the outer edge of their perimeter in under 20 minutes. No alarm, no dogs, just her and the night. She scouted, first moving low, crawling under brush, watching their patrol patterns. She marked the rhythm like she was timing a dance routine, then slipped between 2 sentries like smoke. She took out the first guy with a stunt. Baton to the neck. Clean, silent. His body hit the ground like a sack of flour. She dragged him into the bushes, zip-tied his hands, taped his mouth, and kept moving. No hesitation. By the time she reached the comms tent, she'd already taken out 3 more. Each one quiet, each one confused, disarmed, and wondering what invisible hurricane just body-slammed them into unconsciousness. I fed her intel from my end. 2 guards by the east container, I whispered into the mic. "You're 5 meters out." "Copy," she replied, so calm you'd think she was ordering takeout. She crept up to the container, used a mini mirror to peek around the corner. Then boom, not an explosion, a flashbang, modified to only disorient. She moved in, ducked under the guard's wild swing, dropped him with a knee to the ribs, spun, elbowed the second guy in the throat, both down in 6 seconds. I timed it. Then came the surprise. Inside the container, she found 2 civilians. Hikers. Probably in the wrong place, at the worst time. They were gagged, terrified, and chained like prisoners. She cut them loose, whispered that help was coming, and told them to hide until the fireworks started. Because the fireworks were coming. Once she'd cleared the hostages, Jenna moved toward the main supply hub, the spot with the highest radio activity and the largest heat signatures. That's where they were storing whatever tech they didn't want found. And, turns out, they really didn't want it found. The moment she opened the side door, alarms went off. Someone had triggered a silent tripwire, and the whole camp lit up red. Just like that. Stealth time was over now. If you've never seen someone switch from ghost mode to gladiator mode in under 2 seconds, let me describe it. Jenna pulled 2 smoke grenades from her vest, popped them like soda cans, and vanished. Into the haze. Gunfire rang out random, panicked. The mercs had no idea what they were shooting at. Jenna used that. She sprinted between tents, dropping small charges along fuel drums and communication rigs. Every explosion that followed felt like the earth coughing up its sins. Fires bloomed like angry flowers. Sentries ran in every direction, screaming into radios that didn't work anymore. Then came the big guy. We'd seen him earlier, 6'4", shaved head, probably ex-Russian military. He was barking orders, dragging a rifle that looked more like a cannon. Jenna didn't run. She stood her ground, waited for him to rush her, and then she moved. She dodged his first strike, slammed a baton into his knee, ducked the counterpunch, and landed a spinning elbow that cracked loud enough to make me wince. He grabbed her vest, lifted her off the ground like a rag doll. Bad move. She locked her legs around his waist, reached for his sidearm, and drove it handle first into his temple. He dropped, hard, and stayed there. I whispered into the mic, "You okay?" "Bit winded," she replied. At this point, The camp was chaos. The fuel dump exploded next, sending a fireball into the sky that could be seen from our front yard. I imagine Karen saw it and assumed the world was ending. For once, she wouldn't be entirely wrong. Jenna grabbed the civilians, led them through a cleared path, and signaled the out clear. I called in my military contacts with the coordinates. They were already en route, but by the time they arrived, there'd be nothing left to clean up. Just before sunrise, Jenna emerged from the woods. Her vest was scorched, her hands were scraped, her expression unbothered. She walked into the garage, sat down, and took a long sip of water, like she'd just finished mowing the lawn. "You good?" I asked. "Camp's gone," she said. "Civilians are safe. Mission complete." Then she looked at me and smirked. "Still think I need a rejection letter to tell me what I'm capable of." And I swear right then I could almost hear Karen choking on her morning coffee from 3 houses away. Jenna hadn't just handled it. She owned it. Alone. The sun had barely crested over the treetops when the news vans showed up. First one, then 2, then an unmarked black SUV that parked across from our house and didn't budge for 3 hours. At some point, I counted 5 reporters in our cul-de-sac, all of them holding cameras, coffee, and that kind of nervous excitement people get when they know they're about to witness something that'll go viral. But Jenna, she was inside, asleep on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, her boots still on. She hadn't said much. After returning, just took a shower, ate a protein bar, and passed out with the calmness of someone who'd just cleaned out a terrorist camp like it was a messy garage. And yes, before, you ask Karen, had definitely seen the fireball from the forest. I know because the next morning, she was out in her yard, in full yoga gear, pretending to water already dead plants, but really just watching our house like it owed her an explanation, which, of course, it didn't, because the truth. Karen didn't know squat. None of them did. Not the reporters, not the HOA, not the neighbors who used to avoid eye contact with Jenna at community barbecues. All they knew was that something had happened, something big, and word was spreading fast. The local news broke it first. Explosion in Northridge Forest. Possible illegal weapons operation stopped by unknown party. Unknown party. That phrase stuck. It showed up on every news ticker for the next 2 days. Everyone wanted to know who'd done it. The police wouldn't say. The Rangers refused to comment. And the feds, they showed up around 8 a.m. 2 very serious-looking men in suits who asked to speak with Jenna privately. I stood by the door as they walked in. They didn't salute her. They didn't shake hands. They just nodded like they already knew everything. Sat down at our kitchen table and started speaking in sentences packed with words like containment, clearance, and contractual discretion. Jenna listened. Quiet, alert, polite. When they offered her a sealed envelope, she didn't even look inside. Just asked one question. "Are they cleaned up?" "Yes," suit number 1 replied. "And your effectiveness has been noted." Then they left. And that was that. No medals, no press conference, no record. But 3 days later, a quiet file was uploaded into a secure military portal. I know because Jenna got a call from an old voice she hadn't heard in years, offering her a job. Not an application, a direct hire. Field strategist, training coordinator, flexible deployment schedule. No boot camp, no tests. Just a silent handshake and a contract with numbers high enough to make Wall Street interns blush. She didn't accept. Not right away. She just smiled and said, "I'll think about it." Meanwhile, back in the land of HOA rules and passive neighborhood group chats, Karen was falling apart. It started with whispers, people at the dog park asking, "Did you hear about Jenna?" Others adding, "I think she saved those hikers." My cousin said the feds came to her house. Next came the door knocks. Reporters showing up asking questions like, "Do you know if Jenna was military? And was she ever involved in law enforcement?" Karen tried to brush them off. Claimed, Jenna was just an intense fitness freak. But then, one of them showed her a blurry surveillance still grainy low-res, but unmistakable. It was Jenna, walking away from the firelit camp, dragging that confiscated duffel bag behind her, like it was groceries. Karen's face, apparently, went full sheet white dot. At the next HOA meeting, Karen tried to regain control. She stood in front of the group and delivered one of her classic, condescending speeches, regardless of what some rumors may say. It's important we maintain peace and safety in our neighborhood. Paramilitary activities, excuse me, one of the newer neighbors interrupted. A mom with 2 toddlers and a giant minivan. Didn't you file like 6 complaints against her for training in her own backyard? Karen blinked. Well, yes, because she literally saved 2 civilians. There's video. Why are you still trying to control her? The room turned. I wasn't there, but someone sent me a clip. Karen stammering. People raising eyebrows. The HOA vice president, the one who usually stayed silent, saying, maybe we need new leadership. Ouch. The vote to remove Karen came 2 weeks later. It passed. Unanimously. Jenna didn't even attend the meeting. She was out hiking with a group of local veterans who had invited her to join their weekend survival challenge. She came home muddy, laughing, and holding a backpack full of foraged mushrooms she definitely wasn't going to eat. I told her about Karen being voted out. She just shrugged. She made her own bed. That night, we sat on the porch, watching the sun dip below the tree line. I asked her what she was going to do next. She looked thoughtful, like the question finally had weight. I don't want to go back to what I was, she said, but I don't want to sit still either. Security, consulting, I offered. Training, writing a tell-all under a fake name and selling the movie rights. She smirked. Maybe. A few days later, a letter arrived. This one, unlike the last, was hand-delivered. No rejection, just recognition. A quiet thanks from people who don't say thank you, unless it really counts. Jenna still didn't go public. She turned down interviews, declined speaking gigs, and avoided anything that smelled like fame. But one morning, about a month after the forest fire that wasn't a forest fire, she stepped outside in a crisp new uniform. Not dress blue something. Different. Black. Sleek. Minimal. Like it belonged to a group that didn't officially exist. She didn't say a word. Just walked to her truck, climbed in, and drove off with purpose. Karen, by the way, was out on her lawn, again this time actually, watering her sad, crunchy bushes. She looked up, saw Jenna. Their eyes met for a second. Karen dropped the hose. Jenna didn't even blink. That right there was her victory lap. No speech, no mic drop, just silent, undeniable proof that while some people play pretend power in community newsletters, others rewrite the rules of engagement in the dark and don't ask for applause. From that day forward, people treated Jenna differently. Not with fear, but with respect. They waved first. They asked about her weekend. A few even enrolled their kids in the self-defense classes she quietly restarted at the rec center. And me, I just sat back, watching it all unfold, feeling like the guy who got a front row seat to a superhero origin story no one else believed until the day she proved it was real. Karen tried to reclaim her seat a month later, claimed she'd been misunderstood. That went about as well as you'd expect, because in the end, the neighborhood didn't just choose Jenna over Karen, they chose truth over gossip, strength over ego, action over noise. And for the first time in a long time, it actually felt like home. The emergency HOA meeting wasn't even supposed to happen. Karen tried to cancel it last minute, blaming scheduling conflicts, but no one bought it. People were done playing pretend. By now, enough neighbors had seen the footage, heard the stories, and compared Karen's whining to Jenna's. Well, legend. The vote was short, brutal, public. Karen barely got through her usual spiel about maintaining standards before someone cut her off with, "We need real leadership, not lectures." Mic dropped. Unanimous vote. She was out. Jenna didn't even bother showing up. She was already booked to fly out the next morning, accepted a civilian job with a quiet branch of the military. Not boots on the ground stuff this time. She'd be training new recruits and special ops candidates, teaching them how to survive, move, think. Basically turning soldiers into smarter versions of themselves. Less bang bang, more brain. Before she left, we packed up the house, said goodbye to the handful of neighbors we actually liked, the kind who brought casseroles without asking questions. Then we moved, far away. No HOA, no Karen, just trees, sky, and the occasional wild animal that respected fences more than some people with clipboards. Jenna bought the land outright, built a training camp with her own 2 hands. Ropes courses, survival shelters, an obstacle course so brutal it made Marines cry. She called it Echo Base. I told her that sounded like something out of Star Wars. She said, exactly. One wall of the main cabin has a framed photo, black and white, grainy. Jenna's standing in front of the burning remains of the enemy camp, back turned, smoke curling around her like a crown. No caption, no explanation, but people ask. And every time, I just smile and say, they laughed at her. Until the world realized she was exactly what it needed.